Can I be real or is it boring? To give you a peace of mind, cause mine is so enormous. Way past the norm, Norman, while you're conforming. Like comforting mattresses.
What up, though? It's that nigga mine. And this is a reaction to a channel called Hip Hop Madness. This is like a first time reacting to it on my channel, but I actually watch them a lot. You know, I've been watching them throughout the years. And they talking about the Boondocks. And what y'all might not know, I love the Boondocks, man. I was around when it first came out, and it was the shit. It still is the shit. Even with everything that came out after it, the show is still popular. As popular as it was, maybe even more popular inside of this era of streaming and shit and making reaction videos. So, with that being said, before we get into this, like, subscribe, and share so we hit that 100K today. Stay peaceful, productive, and positive, and let's see what they got to say.
Hold on, I just got out of the shower. There's some juice on the table.
Take your time. You want to explain to me what you're doing here?
This is the opening scene of one of the Boondocks' most infamous episodes, and it is, well...
I came looking for... Excuse me? Oh, I know who you are, Chris Hansen. But see, I calls you Chris Hansen. I watch your TV show.
I remember with this episode, nigga, I was every episode. It's not an episode of the Boondocks that came out that I wasn't rolling, dog. Cause I was a child, dog, when this shit came out, and I was watching, you know, obviously Adult Swim, and had to go to church the next morning, sleepy as hell.
Now I tell you what, I like you, and I want you. Now we can do this the easy way, or we can do it.
And Dave Chappelle show was popping at the same time. So, you can imagine. Then, you know, the Dave Chappelle show stopped, and it was still running a little bit longer, but it was crazy.
The hard way. The choice is yours.
Well, I don't think you and I will be doing anything any kind of way.
Okay, I see you choosing the hard way.
Okay, cut. This isn't working. Someone get this guy.
What starts off as your standard run-of-the-mill to catch a predator parody almost immediately spirals into this deeply uncomfortable power shift. But if you look past the initial shock value, the episode would actually go on to deliver a surprisingly triumphant message about conquering your deepest, most paralyzing fears. I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but it perfectly demonstrates the Boondocks' extreme satire and unapologetic black social commentary that make it one of the greatest black shows ever created. But here's the thing, the Boondocks was a total glitch in the Matrix and a complete anomaly. It was a perfect storm. And was born in this fleeting window of time where networks were actually willing to take a risk, creators had genuine freedom, and a man by the name of Eric.
Right before this, Crank Yankers was on Comedy Central. Obviously, South Park was popping. They had some shit up on it. Like I say, Dave Chappelle show, that really just took over by storm, bro. Because I remember seeing the first episode in my grandma's basement. Nigga sitting on the bed, nigga, looking at one of them old fatback TVs, nigga, with my Xbox right on the side of that bitch. Well, it was really my uncle Xbox, but yeah, I remember that shit.
Magruder had just enough anger to turn it all into a masterpiece. And then, despite its massive, undeniable success, it just vanished. So what the hell happened? And how does a show this popular and culturally influential just stop being made? And how did the Boondocks go on to predict everything we're seeing in hip-hop today?
When people hear the words print on demand, they picture a graphic slapped onto
because he was able to see, like, man, the manipulation tactics they was using against our people, paying them to just be puppets and shit. And then start realizing, but even with going back to Dave Chappelle, he was like, nigga, why motherfuckers kept putting on dresses when he went on Oprah? You know what I'm saying? And Oprah tried to make him look crazy because she's one of them puppets.
In 1996, Aaron Magruder created a web-based comic strip, The Boondocks, while attending the University of Maryland for African American Studies.
And it's crazy, I grew up looking at these comic strips. I used to love looking at the Boondocks comic strips as a child. So when I heard the show was coming, it was anticipated for me. You know what I'm saying? Just the same as how it was for Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 for me. When I seen 3 was about to be more realistic into the, you know, 3D world, I was super excited. You know what I'm saying? I was reading Game Informer with anticipation, especially Vice City. Same thing with Boondocks. When Boondocks came out, I was like, I can't wait. I can't wait till this cartoon come out. Let me see how this should be. And they delivered.
Gruder used the strip to explore politics, race, and black culture,
And I was a
blending social
kid
commentary
reading
with humor that felt way more raw than anything else at the time.
I love this. Garfield comic strip. And the one with the family, I can't think of it, but yeah, I remember that.
One of the first of its kind, it's no surprise that just 3 years later in 1999, Magruder had built a cult-like following which allowed its comic strip series to reach nationwide syndication in American newspapers and magazines alike. As the comic strip expanded across the country, it inevitably caught the eyes of Fox execs, who were looking to expand on their adult comedy division. By 2003, the first pilot for the Boondocks series was greenlit and produced. Sadly, this version of the show was ultimately scrapped before it ever saw the light of day due to the key creative differences, and because it never aired, the footage was widely considered lost media for over 20 years. That is, until 2024, when an unknown user named Cal Eastwood miraculously found and uploaded the full, remastered pilot to the internet. Refusing to dilute his creative vision, Aaron would ultimately walk away from Fox's deal, and in doing so, open the door for the show to end up on a network that actually thrived on
like it
pushing
did,
boundaries.
because we got the animation that we did. But even with that animation, we would have still loved it. But with the animation we got was way better.
It's important to note that edgy, satirical shows that centered around black culture was definitely present before.
Yeah.
However, it was mainly showcased through sketch comedy shows, movies, and stand-up comedy. This kind of comedy was left for the adults to actively seek to find, not randomly come across just flipping channels. Television shows that starred an all-black cast were mostly sitcoms around this era. Think Girlfriends, The Fresh Prince, The Parkers, Everybody Hates Chris, and My Wife and Kids. Most of these shows were family-based, had a generic laugh track, and jokes that were aimed to appeal to as many people as possible, which weren't the most welcoming atmosphere for satirical plots. And even when they did cover racism, most shows had an uncharacteristic, serious tone. Writers had to be careful they weren't offending anybody, or anyone that had the power for their complaints to be heard. And they aired on networks that were conglomerates and not known to risk viewership for innovation. Simply put, it was the safe choice, and sitcoms were the cash cow of TV up until this point. But that format was getting old, and things were about to change. But first, let's be real. Editing a music video is usually a major headache. You either spend thousands of dollars on a shoot, or you end up spending days staring at an edit timeline trying to make the visuals match the beat. But what if you could turn any song into a music video in one click? Well, that's where today's sponsor, Freebeat, comes in. Designed for artists, producers, and creators alike, Freebeat is one of the world's first AI music video agents that turn any song into a custom music video in literally one click. And while you may have messed around with basic AI video tools before, Freebeat is so much more. You don't even need to download the audio. You just paste the link directly from YouTube, SoundCloud, TikTok, or Suno, and Freebeat automatically analyzes the BPM and song structure to generate perfectly beat-synced visuals across your full track. Plus, if a scene isn't exactly what you pictured, you, of course, have full storyboard level control, meaning you get to be the Steven Spielberg of your own visuals.
No, that
you can generate
cool.
specific clips shot by shot, keep your characters visually consistent, and even utilize their face-focused performance system that delivers 90% accurate lip syncing. And if that isn't enough, you also get access to Creator Toolbox with over 20 different features to effortlessly create lyric videos, dance clips, and viral editing effects. So stop letting tracks sit on a hard drive and try creating your own music videos at freebeat.ai today via my link in the description.
Oh yeah, I might
That format was getting old, and things were about to change. Early shows like Eddie Murphy's The PJs was a claymation that spearheaded this movement in many ways. The show poked fun at tenants and other community members living in and around the projects, while enlightening its viewers on issues such as lack of support, safety, funding, and education through the superintendent and character stuff. Then we had The Chappelle Show, which began airing in 2003, which continued to refresh viewers' palates. Writers used the potency of 3 to 15 minute skits to ridicule the ridiculous nature of racism. But this is where the Boondocks would come back into play, thanks to the Cartoon Network-owned Adult Swim, which launched in 2001 and had already began developing a rep for airing quirky late-night adult cartoons, as well as dubbed anime. It was the only network brave enough to let Aaron McGruder be him, while backing his vision to the fullest. The result was a 2005 premiere that hit the culture just as hard as Chappelle had, but in a medium where the boundaries could be pushed even further. Along with being the most expensive TV show that Adult Swim had ever crafted at the time, it also featured an all-star cast, with Regina King voicing both brothers, the legendary John Witherspoon anchoring the show as Granddad, and heavyweights like Samuel L. Jackson, Cat Williams, most Def and Charlie Murphy, regularly dropping in as guest stars, the hype was unreal. When the iconic first episode Garden Party finally dropped, it pulled in well over 1 million viewers, instantly becoming one of the most successful premieres in Adult Swim's history at the time. During the episode, viewers were introduced to the adventures of Southside Chicago's born Huey and Riley after their granddad uproots them to a plush, segregated neighborhood in the suburbs. With Huey serving as an idealistic, politically astute black radical, and Riley obsessed with celebrity worship and gang culture, their characters' differing outlooks allowed for the broadest spectrum of issues to be covered. The premiere brilliantly established the culture clash at the heart of the series, following Granddad as he drags Huey and Riley to an upscale gathering hosted by his wealthy white landlord, while Riley lived out his gangster rap fantasies in a chaotic shootout with their landlord's son. In the episode, we see Huey take the microphone to drop radical truth bombs on the elite guests, declaring that Jesus was black and Ronald Reagan was the devil, only to be met with polite, condescending applause rather than the revolution he was hoping for. With the groundwork laid, Magruder quickly expanded his crosshairs across a variety of cultural
This nigga said he wasn't gonna spoil no shit. He just spoiled some shit for some people that didn't see that first episode.
Topics during its first season. In the trial of Robert Kelly, he masterfully dissects the cognitive dissonance of celebrity worship and the blind spots of the justice system which allowed R. Kelly to walk free until his eventual imprisonment. Then he tackled the Peabody Award-winning episode The Return of the King, which imagined a world where Martin Luther King Jr. wakes up from a 32-year coma, culminating in a follow-up speech where he blasts black Americans for squandering the civil rights movement on ignorance and materialism. But without a doubt, one of the season's most memeable moments came in the story of Gangstalicious, taking direct aim at the ultra-masculine facade of the early 2000s gangster rap. The episode reveals that the hardened thug persona is a complete fabrication designed to cover up the fact that a rapper named Gangstalicious is a closeted homosexual, and his heavily armed ops are actually just his scorned ex-gay lovers. Between its initial airing on November 6, 2005 to the conclusion of the acclaimed Season 3 on August 15, 2010, Magruder was on track to create a dynasty with the Boondocks that would expand far beyond this half-decade run. But behind the scenes, relationships had already begun to sour between the man who birthed the series and the parent company that distributed it. As a result, giving way to a litany of poor decisions that would render Season 4 of the Boondocks a complete shadow of itself.
Base 44 super agents. The next thing you can't live without. No setup. Just say hello. Every tool you already use.
For the visually inclined, one huge shift came when the design of the show changed from MOI animation to Studio Mir. People noticed that although Studio Mir's animations were technically more polished, it looked a little too polished and stiff in comparison to MOI's more natural feeling animation. But where this change was more annoying than it was destructive, it did arrive in tandem with the uneasy announcement that Magruder was stepping away from his show. As the world knows, the Boondocks will be returning for a 4th season, but I will not be returning with it, Magruder said during a 2014 statement. I'd like to extend my gratitude to Sony and Adult Swim.
Once I heard that, I knew 4 was about to be some bullshit. It's just like they destroyed it after
3 great seasons.
And
I created the Boondocks 2 decades ago in college, and it pretty much represents my life's work to this point. Huey, Riley, and Granddad are not just property to me. They're my fictional blood relatives, and nothing is more painful than to leave them behind. Although everything up until this point had seemed relatively amicable, Magruder's statement made the real issue pretty clear. He was fighting to keep the show true to its roots, and he strongly hinted that the executives he was dealing with were ready to sell out that vision. What has never been lost on me is the enormous responsibility that came with the Boondocks, particularly the television show and its relatively young audience, Aaron said. It was important to offend, but equally important to offend for the right reasons. Released in March 2014, Magruder's statement stood as the definitive word on his departure for the better part of a year. That is,
it was definitely that slavery shit. Because that was the episode I kind of caught. I was like, I ain't about to watch this shit. I'm not watching this. You know, part 4 is just horrible. Horrible. That's it.
Until the infamous 2014 Sony Pictures email hack, perpetrated by a hacker group calling itself the Guardians of Peace, which was widely believed to be tied to North Korea in retaliation for the movie The Interview, which heavily mocked North Korea. The hack was one of the most unprecedented corporate leaks in Hollywood history. Thanks to this, the public was treated to a massive treasure trove of industry secrets. The emails exposed a blatant gender pay gap, revealing that Jennifer Lawrence was paid significantly less than her male co-stars in American Hustle. They laid bare the cutthroat nature of Hollywood producers, with executive Scott Rudin viciously referring to Angelina Jolie as a minimally talented spoiled brat. On the lighter side, the hack also gifted the internet with Channing Tatum's hilariously unhinged all-caps email celebrating the box office success of 22 Jump Street. But for fans of the Boondocks, the most damning revelation buried within those gigabytes of data had to do with Aaron McGruder. The leaked internal chains completely validated Gruder's earlier hints about a toxic relationship with the studio. In one exchange, executives were bracing for the potential public fallout of moving forward with season 4 without Aaron, when the head of Sony Pictures Television at the time, Steve Mosko, dismissed the idea of McGruder speaking out against them, saying, "He's gonna tweet anyway. The fight will create good press. Send it all my way. I wish he wrote this fast on the show." These sentiments were then shared by Zach Van Amber, head of US programming and production at Sony, who claimed, "They're wasting everyone's time and holding us hostage over Aaron's incompetence." And the craziest part, Sony wasn't even trying that hard to hide what they were doing, as John Witherspoon, the iconic voice of Granddad, actually aired out all this dirty laundry publicly during an interview on Sway in the Morning.
Aaron McGruder is so sick, mad at Sony Pictures. Yeah. He sold his rights to TV.
These bitch ass motherfuckers, and it is what it is. They destroyed something that could have been greater. They could have made a lot of money. They're still making money off of it because we still love the show. But in the same extent, it's just like that's crazy. He made a bad deal. That's all it was, man. I wish he contractually made a better deal where he kept his rights to be creative, his creative control, but it is what it is.
To Sony, and they wanted to go 3 more years after this year. Yeah. But they want him to do 3 shows a week. He said, "I can't write that fast." They fired him and got some poot butts to write. And so he quit, and we done.
No longer in control of his brainchild, the void left by McGruder meant that the 4th season was constructed by a new batch of writers that, while talented, just couldn't replicate the tone and the feel of Aaron's witty world outlook. And as disheartening as the drop in quality was in the short term, the real tragedy was how it temporarily tarnished the show's reputation. Today, most fans put a massive asterisk next to season 4 as if it doesn't exist. But ironically, as the real world grew increasingly unhinged over the next few years, with many of the show's episodes coming to fruition, the absence of McGruder's unfiltered voice only became more glaringly obvious. As clips spread and a new generation began to recognize just how prophetic the show was, the push for a revival kept growing louder and louder, until in June 2019, we finally got the news we'd been waiting for. Rolling out on Charlemagne the God's Instagram under the hashtag Boondocks Back, the show was returning with new comic strips accompanied with a statement from McGruder himself. There's a unique opportunity to revisit the world of the Boondocks and do it over again for today, Aaron told Deadline. It's crazy how different the times we live in are now, both politically and culturally. People want to know that they're not crazy, he said, claiming a lot of what he does is just looking at the big, obvious stuff and saying, "Hey everyone, look at this big, obvious thing. It's right here and we can all see it." From here, the response was massive. HBO Max, the new home of the Boondocks, had officially greenlit the 2-season, 24-episode revival, complete with a 50-minute special. The proposed premise was tailor-made for the modern Trump-fueled era, where Huey, Riley, and Granddad would be battling against Uncle Ruckus, who had somehow maneuvered his way into becoming the tyrannical ruler of Woodcrest's local government. For fans, it felt like the ultimate reverse course correction. Aaron was finally going to continue to dissect the absolute madness of the modern political and cultural landscape. But then, tragedy struck. Just months after the reboot was announced, the legendary and irreplaceable voice of Robert Granddad Freeman, aka John Witherspoon, passed away in October 2019. His passing dealt a devastating emotional and logistical blow to the production. And for many, the idea of doing the Boondocks without Witherspoon's iconic comedic timing felt practically impossible. But as if this wasn't unfortunate enough, the sudden passing suggests that a degree of the same meddling and underhandedness from Sony execs was still at play. Brought to light by John Witherspoon's son, JD, a fellow voice actor who does an impeccable impression of his late father, he outlined what he believed to be the unethical conduct from the show's producers.
When I got in the room, the casting director oddly said to me, "Hey, first time in front of the mic?" I was actually concerned because I was like, no, has no one seen my resume? Did my reps not send it? Which they did.
In addition to admitting that they'd reached out to some specific actors the week that he passed, and gave the role to someone that JD believes to have viewed his Instagram stories for research, he claimed that his own audition for voicing his own dad seemed to be nothing more than a token gesture to save public face. Then, shortly after, as the world plunged into the global lockdowns of 2020, updates on the reboot went completely silent. And behind the scenes, the project was caught in a perfect storm of corporate chaos. HBO's parent company, Warner Bros. Discovery, began a radical restructuring of the HBO platform. To add more chaos to the mix, the merger triggered a massive wave of tax write-offs and budget cuts. As a result, high-budget, hand-drawn adult animation projects were quietly slashed left and right for quote-unquote tax write-offs and replaced by heavily unscripted, low-cost garbage. By 2022, Sony officially confirmed the project was quote-unquote dead after the development deal with HBO Max expired without a single episode seeing the light of day. Ultimately, the story of the Boondocks is one of brilliant, uncompromising art colliding with the rigid walls of corporate television.
That's fucked up.
And is a tale as old as the industry itself.
Hopefully somebody released that shit soon.
So where's the Boondocks today? 2 decades later, the Boondocks has grown a cult-like fan base. You can literally watch illegally uploaded episodes of the show pull in millions of views on YouTube in a matter of days, right before they're inevitably taken down due to copyright. Which leaves us with one uncomfortable question. If shows like South Park and The Simpsons are allowed to satirize pop culture for over 30 uninterrupted years, why wasn't black culture allowed to keep its own generational satirical landmark series? And how exactly did the Boondocks predict the fall of hip-hop? I'll see you in part 2. Thanks for watching.
That shit was fire, dog. So with that being said, tell me how y'all feel about the Boondocks. What's y'all memories? Stay peaceful. Or what's y'all favorite episode? My favorite episode, I gotta say, is the fundraiser. So with that being said, like, subscribe, and share. Stay peaceful, productive, and positive. It's that nigga mine. And much love. And let's get a lot of likes. Come on, man. Hit them likes.
Can I be real or is it boring? To give you a peace of mind, cause mine is so enormous. Way past the norm, Norman, while you're conforming. Like comforting mattresses that comfort them when torment snoring. Like you in your own home with a home phone. I'm more like E.T., got a phone home past the moon.